Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about the Republican U.S. Senate seat currently in the state of Iowa, held by Republican Senator Joni Ernst. Now, since the last video I made, which was only about a week ago, we actually have some very important updates in the Senate race in the state of Iowa. So I'm going to try my best to cover all of them today. If I miss anything, obviously leave a comment below saying what I did, and I'll try and get a future video as well going over it. So on the 2026 U.S. Senate map, there are 4 Senate races right now that I currently have in the toss-up column, them being Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, and Maine. I also have 2 Senate races right now that I currently have in the lean column, those being New Hampshire and Ohio. Now, obviously, Democrats are going to have a differing opinion from me on this. They have a Senate seat that they believe they have the potential to put in play here. Obviously, there's several more that they want to put in play, but one of them is the state of Iowa, where the Republican Senator Joni Ernst, up until a few days ago, was running for re-election in this race. Now, that news has changed, where Joni Ernst is no longer in for re-election. She has officially announced that she is not. So for the 2026 U.S. Senate race in Iowa, we know that Joni Ernst will not be the Republican nominee. Now, just within a few days of Ernst announcing she will not run, U.S. Representative from Iowa's 2nd Congressional District, Ashley Hinson, has announced that she is running for the U.S. Senate to succeed Joni Ernst. Now, 2 other Republicans are in this race, Jim Carlin and Joshua Smith, but Ashley Hinson is certainly the highest profile Republican at this current point in time. And of the Republicans in the race, I fully expect Ashley Hinson will win this Republican primary. The only way that I think Hinson does not become the Republican nominee would be if another Republican like Brenna Byrd, the Attorney General, or Matthew Whitaker, U.S. Ambassador to NATO, decided to enter this race and got the endorsement of President Trump, because President Trump's endorsement in these Republican Senate primaries holds a lot of weight. And we saw this back in 2022 and 2024, that whoever got Trump's endorsement had a very strong chance at winning the primary. I don't know if Ashley Hinson will get Trump's endorsement or not, or if any of these other 2 Republicans hop in, but if they do, that could be something to watch. Otherwise, I think Ashley Hinson is the Republican candidate to go forward. But for Iowa, Iowa's a very interesting state, because when you look at the track record of Iowa's elections, it has been one of the most Republican trending states in all the United States in the past really 10 years or so. When you look at the presidential level, Donald Trump just won the state against Kamala Harris by 13.2%. And when you look at all the Democratic counties in the state of Iowa, it's very easy. You can count them all on one hand. The only Democratic counties, that voted for the Democrats in Iowa were Johnson County, Lynn County, Blackhawk County, Story County, and Polk County. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't any competitive counties. For instance, Scott, Iowa was under 5 points. I'd consider that competitive. Dallas was about 4.7. That would also, I'd consider to be pretty competitive as well. But you could see a massive win for President Trump in the state of Iowa. Iowa, also in 2020, voted for Donald Trump by 8.2% against Joe Biden. Again, Joe Biden winning about the same 5 Democratic counties, as well as Scott as well. And back in 2016, Trump defeated Hillary Clinton here by 9.4%. Now, more third-party vote was involved here, but Iowa voted likely Republican. Iowa did not always used to be this way, though. Where just 4 years prior, in 2012, Barack Obama defeated Mitt Romney in the state of Iowa by about 5.8%. This was obviously the last time at the presidential level that Iowa voted for a Democrat. 2012, which somehow was 13 years ago now, voted for Obama, and you see a lot more blue on the map. You see a lot more smaller counties as well being blue, and by relatively decently sized vote percentages as well. Back in 2008, it voted for Barack Obama by 9.5% against the Republican candidate John McCain. 2004, it very barely voted for George Bush by 0.67%. In 2000, it voted for Al Gore by 0.31%. So Iowa has been one of the most Republican trending states at the presidential level in recent years. And you can see that President Trump has been a big reason for that. He's been able to turn out Republican voters in the state of Iowa and get them to become Republicans a lot more so in the last really 10 to 15 years or so than a lot of other Republicans have. But this momentum did start a little bit before Trump as well, where you could look at the Iowa Senate race back, I believe this would have been in 2008 or so, we saw Iowa with the Democrat Senator Harkin win by 25.4% against the Republican Reid in a very, very big win in this race. Now we can jump forward 2 years later. Republican Chuck Grassley, as he does, won a very big election, but that Senate race was going to be up in 2014, where this race The Democratic Senator Tom Harkin did not run for re-election to a sixth term in office, so it was a longtime Democratic incumbent, and this was an open race. It ended up being the Republican Joni Ernst facing off against Democrat Representative Bruce Braley. And what happened was Joni Ernst ended up winning by about 9 points in the state of Iowa, and what potentially was a sign of things to come in the following years for elections in Iowa. Now, 2014, it should be worth noting, was also a very strong midterm election year for the Republicans, where Republicans picked up, they did not lose one Senate seat, and they picked up 9 Senate seats, including in places like Colorado, which don't usually vote Republican now. They won Senate seats in North Carolina, Iowa, as I mentioned, obviously. They held on in Kansas in what looked like it would be its very tough fight. They picked up a Senate race in Louisiana and South Dakota, and I do believe I already said Alaska as well, including almost flipping Virginia with Mark Warner and Ed Gillespie being a very close race in New Hampshire as well. Joni Ernst was able to win Iowa by 8.3%. Now come 2020, Joni Ernst, despite Iowa voting for Donald Trump here by about 9 points or so, Joni Ernst wins re-election against Democrat Teresa Greenfield by 6.5%. And what's actually one of the more competitive races we've seen in Iowa at the Senate level and presidential level in recent years, this is really the closest it's gotten at the federal level. Governor level is a different story, but Joni Ernst, Teresa Greenfield actually looked like to be a pretty competitive race. And at the polling data, it definitely did. Real Clear Politics only had Joni Ernst leading with 1.4% over Teresa Greenfield, with still 7% of the vote being other or undecided heading into Election Day. So whatever the independents and undecided voters decided to do in that election based on the polling ended up deciding this race. And what happened was a lot of them broke for Joni Ernst. Pretty much all of them broke for Joni Ernst, getting 51.74% in the state of Iowa. Now, that being said, despite Iowa being more of a likely Republican state, there were questions about Joni Ernst's re-election campaign for 2026, as some polls showed her approval ratings not being the strongest. And then comes May of 2025, where Ernst was speaking at an event and sparked controversy after she replied to a constituent upset about the thousands of preventable deaths resulting from Medicaid cuts and the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that Republicans and President Trump was promoting in the Senate that ultimately did end up passing. And Ernst responded by saying, quote, "Well, we are all going to die," during a town hall in north central Iowa. That went over about as well as you expected it would. Ernst was very much panned from this by Iowa Democrats and by Democrats obviously across the nation. And it really put a lot of attention on the Senate race, where Joni Ernst, the Republican incumbent, should not be really facing much of a challenge in this campaign. However, the polling did not necessarily show that. Only one poll was conducted from Public Policy polling, which is a Democratic Senate majority PAC. So you do have to take these numbers very much with a grain of salt, as they are the Democrats' top campaign PAC. But it shows, at very least, Joni Ernst under the margin of error for the Democrats in this race, with a lot of undecided votes remaining. Pretty much similar to what it was in 2020, where Ernst was narrowly leading, but there was enough undecideds to shape this race into potentially being a Democratic win. And that put Republicans a little bit at ease. But still, Republicans felt pretty confident in this race that Ernst could win. But now, Ernst is not running. It's an open race. And I actually think the Republicans' chances in the state of Iowa with Ashley Hinson, believe it or not, actually improved now that Joni Ernst is not running. Ashley Hinson, you can look at the House level here in 2024, won her second district by 15.6%. When you compare it to the Cook PVI of this map, it is a Republican +4 district. So a lean Republican district based on the last 2 elections or so. But here, she won it by 15.6%, which suggests that she is a better Republican candidate, at least in her own district. In 2022, this district was won by Hinson by 8.2%. Again, a pretty strong margin. Worth noting, she did face off against different candidates. The district before was Iowa 1, where Hinson won by 2.6% against the Democrat Finkenauer, who, back in 2018, actually held this district. So Hinson's represented this from 2020 through 2024 and through the 2020 census, which redrew this district. Now she's running for the U.S. Senate race to succeed Joni Ernst. And the Democrats that are running to still try and take on the Senate race, because Democrats don't want to give up hope on this race now that Joni Ernst is not running. Democrats still want to win this race. There are a lot of Democrats running. Former state representative Bob Kraus, who's a frequent candidate in Iowa, is now running. Jackie Norris, a chair of the Des Moines School Board, and former chief of staff to the First Lady, Michelle Obama, is running. Nathan Sage, a market director for KNIA, a radio station, I believe, in Iowa. Also, the first Democrat to enter this race is still running. Josh Turek, a state representative, is running, as well as Zach Walz, a state senator. So there is no shortage of Democratic candidates in this primary seeking to be the Democratic nominee for Senate in the state of Iowa. The prospects of them winning this race, though, I think have gotten a little bit tougher. But still, Democrats are looking to make this a competitive race. Overall, though, Inside Elections, Cook Politico, and Sabra Crystal Ball, 3 political prediction websites, have this race listed as likely for the Republicans, suggesting that Republicans should probably hold on here and by more than 5 or 6% or so. Whereas Race to the White House, another political prediction website, has it as lean Republican, updated after the news that Joni Ernst was not running. That's all the polling data we have to go off this race, as the Joni Ernst news is still very recent. But Iowa's going to be very interesting to watch, though, because when you see how the state has gone at the Senate level, it's been likely Republican in 2022, in 2020, in 2016. It was safe for the Republicans, and Joni Ernst in 2014. It was likely for the Republicans, despite the fact the presidential level, it voted blue in 2012. Now, in 2010, it voted for Chuck Grassley by 31 points. The Senate seat was safe blue in 2008. The governor level does perhaps give Democrats a glimpse of hope, even though in 2022, Kim Reynolds won by 18.5%. In 2018, it only voted for Reynolds by 2.7%. So it gives the Democrats a potential blueprint for what a competitive election could look like at the county level. Still, though, at the federal level, which involves the Senate and presidential race, and even the House race to a certain degree, Iowa seemed like a pretty reliable red state. So for right now, I think Iowa still remains in the likely Republican category, even though Joni Ernst is not running in this race. I think Ashley Hinson being the Republican gives the Republicans at very least the same, if not a slightly better chance at winning this race. Now, likely Republican, I would put this into the 5 or 15% in between margin of victory result. I think it's a little too early now to say for sure how this race is going to end up, but I think the Republicans right now are going to win it by more than 5 points, but less than 15 points. Iowa is an interesting state that has trended very much to the Republican direction and is going to be another fascinating Senate race to watch for on the 2026 Senate map. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you did, leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts on this video and any other video ideas you have for me to cover. Please leave them all down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.